Hello everyone, in this video we're going to talk about how we can write repeating decimals as fractions. So we've looked at different kinds of decimals, terminating and now repeating, and now let's jump in. So with repeating decimals, it's basically a 4-step with an if necessary 5th step process. So let's read through these 5 steps and then we'll look at 4 repeating decimals that we're going to write as fractions. So step number 1, we're going to write the original number in expanded form. So what I'm talking about there, if we look down at example number 1, it says 0.34 repeating. So we want to expand that to be like 0.343434. Just maybe do the pattern a couple times, and the reason why leads us to step number 2. So then we're going to move the decimal to the right as many places as there are repeating decimals. So once again on example number 1, we would now take that decimal that's between 0.3 and we would move it twice to the right because 3 and 4 are both repeating. Then we're going to subtract the original number from the new number that we got from step 2. So the original number would be our 0 point repeating decimal, and our new number would be the number that we got after we moved the decimal in step number 2. Finally, we're going to put the result from step 3 over a denominator of 999, 999, so on and so forth, depending on the amount of repeating numbers. So for number 1, we had 2 repeating numbers, so our denominator should be 99. Now at this step, we might need to move the decimal in the numerator, and if that's the case, we can do that, but we need to also move the decimal in the denominator. So we'll see an example of that as well. And then lastly, if necessary, we might have to simplify the fraction. So let's jump right in. So number 1, we have 0.34 repeating. So step number 1 says write the number in expanded form. So I'm just going to write it as 0.343434. Okay, and obviously that continues, but I'm just expanding it a little bit. Now I'm going to move the decimal to the right 2 times because the 3 and the 4 are repeating. So 1, 2. And now I have the number 34.3434. Now step 3 says subtract my original number. So that would be 0.3434. And you can see that this will continue on, but then so will that one, right? So it'll just keep canceling out. So really now we can do our subtraction, and all of these are going to cancel, right? So we're just left with 34, and now step 4 says put the result over our denominator. So we had 2 numbers that repeated, 3 and 4, so our denominator will be 99. Now we're going to check and see if we can simplify this, and we cannot. So we're going to leave it as 34 over 99. Okay, so now if you have a calculator handy or next to you, you could type in 34 divided by 99, and you look and it says 0.343434. So that's 0.34 repeating. Okay. All right, number 2. 0.5, and now just the 2 is repeating. So when we expand this, we're going to say 0.5222, so on and so forth, with just 2's repeating. Now let's move the decimal just 1 place to the right because only the 2 was repeating. So now we have 5.222. Now let's subtract 0.5, 2 repeating. Okay, so now these 2's will cancel, these 2's will cancel, but we're going to have to borrow here, and we're going to get 4.7. Okay, now we had 1 digit that repeated, so our denominator should be a 9. But now look what we have. We have 4.7 over 9. We can't leave a decimal in our fraction. So we're going to move this decimal once to the right. So now we must move this decimal once to the right. So that becomes 90. So our fraction is actually 47 over 90. And that won't simplify either. And if we have a calculator, we could do 47 divided by 90. And we see 0.52 repeating. All right, number 3. 0.4827, and the 3 digits after the 4, 827, are repeating. So when we expand this, 0.4827827, it would look something like that. Okay, now we're going to move the decimal 3 times because we had 3 digits repeating. So 1, 2, 3. So now we have 482.7827. Now we're going to subtract our original 0 point decimal, so 0 point, and 4827, so on and so forth. So we see that our 7's, 2's, 8's, those are all going to cancel out, right? 8 minus 8 is 0. And then we have 7 minus 4, which is 3, and then this would be 482. Now we had 3 digits that repeated in this example, so our denominator should be 999. But we still have that decimal there in the numerator, so we got to move it once to the right, so we move this one once to the right. So it ends up being 4,823 over 9,990. Okay, so 4,823 divided by 9990, and we see our repeating decimal. So it'd be 0.4827 with the 827 repeating. Now, on these first three, we saw an example of 2 digits repeating, 1 digit repeating, and then 3 digits repeating. But if you notice, we didn't have to simplify any of these. So let's take a look at our last example where we do have to simplify. So we're going to expand this. So we're going to do 0.6666. So we'll just expand our 6 there. Now we had 1 digit that repeated, so let's move that decimal just once to the right. So now we have 6.66, so on and so forth. Subtract our original number, which was 0.6666, and now we just get a result of 6, right? Now we're going to put that over 9 because we had 1 digit that repeated. And now notice what we have. We have 6 over 9, which both of those numbers are divisible by 3. So we can divide this by 3 over 3, and we get 2/3. Okay, so 2/3 is a pretty common repeating decimal for a fraction, right? So hopefully you see, okay, 2/3, that would be 0.6 repeating. All right, and that is how you can write a repeating decimal as a fraction.